ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So last chapter we had discussed about adverse activities of the living entities. Those living entities in this material world who performs varieties of adverse activities, activities which are not congenial, activities which are sinful, activities which make the living entity bound in this material world. So that was being described. If the living entity performs these kind of adverse activities, the result is samsritim, repeated birth and death. If the living entity does not perform these sinful activities and learns devotional service as explained by Lord Kapila, then he obtains Shreya Shritim. Prabhupada explains this. One is called Samsritim, another is called Shreya Shritim. That means he goes back to Godhead. He attains his ultimate goal, ultimate welfare. He gets relieved from this samsriti. But if he performs adverse activities, he is bound and again he takes birth. So what is that samsritim that was also described by Lord Kapila? How this living entity performs varieties of sinful activities, he suffers in hellish planets and then he is given hellish kind of body, and slowly when his punishment is over, once again by the arrangement of the Lord, he is given a chance to come out of this cycle of samsriti. So actually how essential it is to understand all these things, because if we don't understand, we will be carried away by what the mass of people are doing. They have no idea that human life is so valuable, that it is obtained after so many going up and down in the cycles of birth and death. It is a chance to come out of this cycle of samsriti. So, Mother Devahuti had placed an inquiry, and these different chapters are described in answer to Mother Devahuti's queries. So if you see, what did Mother Devahuti ask, in response to which Lord Kapila is describing these adverse fruitive activities, movement of the living entity, how he moves around from different species of life, all these things. So Mother Devahuti had asked this question. Virago yena purusho bhagavan sarvato bhavet achakshva jiva lokasya vividha mama samsritihi. So, achakshaya means please describe. Jiva lokasya, for the benefit of people in general. So why Lord Kapila is describing all these things? It is meant for welfare of people. Why this knowledge is required? We should understand why Lord Kapila is giving all this knowledge. So Mother Devahuti is asking that please describe some Sriti, repeated birth and death. You see? And for what? What is the reason? She is saying, Jiva Lokasya, for the welfare of all the living entities in this universe. Jiva Lokasya Vividhaha, varieties of living entities. Mama, and for my benefit. Samsritihi, repetition of birth and death. And what is the reason she is giving? Why you should describe? Okay, she has said that please describe in detail for the welfare of living entities and for myself. What to describe? Samsriti, repeated birth and death. She gives a very, very important understanding about why this is required, why this knowledge is important, why she wants it to be described. Virago yena purusho. By this knowledge, Purusha, the living entity, he may become detached from this samsriti. He may become detached from this material world. Virago yena purusho bhagavan. O Bhagavan, O Lord Kapila. Sarvato bhavet. Please describe that knowledge by which the living entity can become completely detached. Sarvato means completely detached. Virago, from this samsriti. So Prabhupada translates this very nicely. My dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death. Samsriti is called continual process of birth and death. For by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of material world. You see? Because sometimes what happens, we are not able to see with our blunt material senses. Our senses are very blunt. It is just like the goat tied in the slaughterhouse. It is so blunt, it cannot understand the impending death. Even though right in front of that goat, so many other goats are slaughtered. Similarly, our intelligence has become so dull in this material world that even though we see so many people dying around us, this thought doesn't cross our mind that what is this material world? I am so much busy in this material world for what? One day I will also have to live like this. Isn't it? So we just accept it blindly. We don't even question. We don't even try to understand. So this is the reason. So Mother Devahuti is asking, So that by reading and understanding all these things, this knowledge, one will become detached. And that is how Lord Kapila is describing how the living entity severely suffers in the hands of Yamadutas in the hellish condition of life, and then he is trained once again to go hellish condition of life in varieties of material bodies given by Mother Nature. Karmana Deva Netrena, correct? Under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to his karma, Jantur Deha Upapadyate, the living entity is awarded different kinds of bodies. We saw in the last verse. It's a very famous shloka which Prabhupada quotes many, many times. How the living entity is awarded varieties of body under the supervision of the Supreme Lord according to his karma. So here, in this chapter, we will find complete embryology, the science of how the living entity is born once again into human form of life is described. Of course, in general also it is described, just like here it is said that either it is Andaja, that on the first night the sperm and ovum mix. So before that we saw that the living entity comes down by the arrangement of the Lord through rain. So he descends to this earthly planet through the medium of rains. That same living entity through the earth, it goes into the grains. So from rain to the earth to grains. And when these grains are eaten, it goes into the semen of a person. This is how the living entity is transferred to the semen of a particular person, a particular living entity. Say for example, if somebody has to take birth as a dog, he comes down through the rains, goes to the earth, and then through grains, he goes to the body of a particular dog, male dog. He goes into the semen of male dog, and it is injected into the womb of she-dog. That semen is injected. The living entity through the medium of semen. Semen is not giving birth. It carries the living entity. Otherwise, why every time semen does not give birth? You don't find. Isn't it? It's not that it is only one time the living entity has sex. Correct? So, if the living entity is not carried in that semen, it cannot give birth. It doesn't give birth. But if the living entity is carried and if the circumstances are favorable for the development of the body, then it happens. So, in the last verse we saw that the living entity is injected into the womb of mother through the semen of father. So, further what happens is explained now by Lord Kapila. So, he says, Kalalam tu ek ratrena. On the first night, what happens is, the living entity is carried through the sperm and mother produces an egg. Whatever, it is a kind of secretion the mother produces. Male secretion, female secretion mixes together on the first night. Male secretion is carrying the living entity. Female secretion has the ingredients to create the body of that living entity. So, how it is happening? First night, the mixture is mixing, that's all. Kalalam, it is the mixing of ovum and sperm. Pancharatrena budbudam. On the fifth night, this mixture takes the form of like something like a small bubble. You see, just like you will see when you take bath with soap, you will get some bubbles. So like that, small bubble it becomes like. Dashahena, after 10 days, Karkanduhu. Karkandu is a plum, small, that reddish plum you must have seen. In Hindi it is called Aloo Bukhara, small fruit, red color. So it turns into that much big plum. And then it says, Peshi andam va tataha param. And after some time, in due course of time, either it develops into an embryo or andam. Peshi means flesh in the form of a small embryo, or andam. Andam means in the form of an egg. So Prabhupada explains that the Vedic literatures explain this, that living entities are born in 4 ways, 4 types. One is called Andajaha. Jaha means takes birth. Those living entity which take birth from egg, like the birds, that is called Andajaha. Then there are certain living entities which take birth from Shvedajaha. Shved means perspiration. Perspiration creates a favorable environment. The living entity is carried in perspiration. It creates a favorable environment for them, like bugs, certain kind of flies. They are born from perspiration. So now this should not be misunderstood to be thinking perspiration, sweat gives rise to that living entity. It should not be misunderstood like that. This is called as Tandula Vrishchika Nyaya. Prabhupada explains this. Tandula means rice. It's a heap of rice. Vrishchika is scorpion. So, foolish people think that from the heaps of rice, Vrishchika, scorpion is born. After some time you may find scorpion is born. Sometime you will find in some vegetables, it ferments, and after some time you see so many worms are there in that. You may be surprised, there were no worms here. From where did they come? Is it that this, after fermentation, it has given rise to that? No. The living entity is there. That fermentation is the suitable environment for it to take a body, and it takes the body of a worm. Similarly, that perspiration is a favorable environment. The living entity is already there, and it takes the body of a bug or whatever. So here Prabhupada explains this scorpion is very clever. It does not hatch its own egg. It goes and lays its eggs in the heap of rice, and because of that heap of rice, because of the warmth of the heap of rice, this egg hatches, and that is how the scorpion, these babies comes out from that heap of rice. So it's not that the heap of rice is giving birth to, it is only a favorable environment for it to take birth, that's all. So they are called as, these living entities which take birth from perspiration, they are called as Shvedajaha. Udbija is the third type. Udbija means those living entities which take birth in the form of a seed from earth, that is called as Udbija. And fourth is Jaraya Jaha. Jaraya means embryo. So many animals you find, just like dog or cows, buffaloes, mammals we call them, right? They take birth through embryos. So these are the four kinds of living entity. That is why Lord Kapila is describing here that on the 10th night it develops into a form like a plum, and after that it gradually turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be. So if it is birds, then it will take the form of an egg, and if it is a mammal, it will take the form of an embryo. So all these are different kinds of arrangements made by the Supreme Lord, and the real purpose of the creation of this material world is that the Lord is very kind. He wants to give us a chance to go back to Godhead. That is the real why this samsariti is going on. So I was just reading in the chapter of Narad Muni describing about the story of Puranjana. One very interesting context comes there, and Prabhupada explains how the Lord arranges so many things for the living entities. Everything He has arranged is just He is very eager to get us back to Godhead. He is more eager than us to get the living entities back to Godhead. So I was reading, Prabhupada and Narad Muni later on explains that after Narad Muni rejected the proposal of Jara, the proposal of Kalakanya, the daughter of time. Daughter of time is Jara, Kalakanya. So nobody is interested to marry daughter of time, Kalakanya, correct? So it was looking out for a husband. And then in the course of time it went and proposed to Narad Muni, and Narad Muni straight away rejected. So Prabhupada explains that foolish people think that Narada's body is also like an ordinary body. No. So Kalakanya was thinking like this, Narad Muni body is also like some ordinary body. No, it is not. It is a spiritual body. It is not affected by old age, it is not affected by Kala, it is not affected by Kalakanya. So it is not affected by any of them. So then Narada gave benediction to this Kalakanya that very soon you can approach Yavana Raja, you can approach the kings of Yavana. His name is Bhaya, fear. You can approach and he will definitely accept you. So this Kalakanya went and approached Yavana Raja. So first of all she said, you are a great hero, and I know anyone who takes shelter of you, he will not be bewildered anymore. So I want to take your shelter. Please accept me. She also said that you are a Kshatriya, you are a Yavana Raja, you are a king. So a king cannot refuse a charity. And charity should be done according to the scriptures. It should be given according to scriptures. It should be accepted according to scriptures. So it is said that for a Kshatriya king, if any woman goes and begs shelter that please marry me, Kshatriya king cannot refuse. So she wanted to remind that king. And she said, you must give me protection, I am very distressed. So Yavana Raja is thinking what to do. Should I accept or should I reject? Narad Muni directly rejected. Now he cannot reject because Narad Muni has already given that prediction that Yavan Raja is going to accept you. So he cannot reject. That is not possible. But he is thinking how to accept. In what way to accept? That is very important. So Prabhupada explains there. Later on, Yavan Raja accepted this Kalakanya as a sister. And he said, you as my sister, and I have another brother, Jwara. So that is called as Prajwara. Jwara we know, fever. Prajwara means fever that leads to death. So Prabhupada calls it around 107 degree. So after 105, 106, when the living entity comes to this 107, he is finished. So practically when death occurs, this is how it is described that Prajwara grasps him. So already old age is there. So old age and Prajwara together, Yavana Raja thought of utilizing it in the service of the Lord. Bhaya or Yavana Raja is also subservient to the Lord. Ekale Ishware Krishna or Sabhratya. Everyone else is a servant. So he thought, let me use this fear factor to make people God conscious. This jara, if I accept, and this jara when it will attack the living entity, if the living entity is sane, if he is intelligent, he will become fearful that very soon I am going to end up my life. Symptoms are appearing. My organs are failing because of the old age. My hairs are turning grey. Right? So when old age comes, person, if he is sane, he becomes fearful. He understands, very soon my life may come to an end. So at least to instill this fear, Yavan Raja wanted to accept Kalakanya. That yes, I will accept and let it go and attack every living entity so that it will instill some kind of fear in them. And out of fear, at least they will try to take up and understand, let me solve this problem of what is this? I am going to die one day. And he may try to solve this problem. Isn't it? So actually that is the reason. So just like Devahuti is asking that describe this, because by knowing this and understanding this, one will become detached. Isn't it? So this is a very important understanding. We should not neglect. We should not be thinking that what is this, I have to understand how the living entity is going from one womb to another, how he is born, what I have got to do. I should be studying only Krishna Leela. Isn't it? So all this understanding and knowledge will make us aware about the reality of this material world to which we are so much attached, and because of which again and again we are taking repeated birth in this material world. So devotee has no attraction, no attachment with this material world. But of course, this is very important to understand. Even though the devotee is not interested in this material world, he is callous about this material world, nevertheless, it is not that it is disappointing for him. A devotee is not disappointed. One day I am going to die, one day I am going to leave everything. Devotee knows I have come here, I will serve the Lord according to whatever the arrangement the Lord has given. Factually, a devotee has actually no fear because he understands this. What is his death? This is also an arrangement of the Lord. Isn't it? Kalosmi, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. So what has to be afraid of death? It is another feature of the Lord only. Devotee is not afraid. Prahlad Maharaj was not afraid of that Kala feature of the Lord in the form of ghastly form. Hiranyakashipu was trembling in fear, seeing that form. Even all others were also trembling. Prahlad is not trembling. He is not afraid. In his prayers he says, my dear Lord, I am not afraid of this form of yours. Isn't it? So, devotee has a proper understanding. So by reading all these things, actually we come to a proper understanding, proper knowledge. And accordingly, it is an impetus for devotees that my time may come very soon. Let me try, work hard. Why should I waste my time in so many things? Devotee should be very shrewd, very intelligent to utilize his time properly, so that every moment, whatever we utilize, actually will be multiplied many times in devotional service. And whatever time you invest in different kinds of material activities, when we understand the such temporariness of this material body, isn't it? We have to understand. Prabhupada is saying, Yuktahara viharascha. As much it is required for the body, only that much endeavor, not more than that. Devotee is not interested. This body is going one day to be finished. It will be burnt to ashes. What am I going to do with this body? Now it is there, let me keep it healthy so that I can serve Krishna with this body. Utilize everything to serve the Lord. This should be the understanding of the devotees. So we'll stop with this Granth Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.